What if, in the middle of an ordinary day, no miracles, no thunder, no dramatic sign in the sky, you suddenly felt as if someone was speaking directly to your heart? Not loudly, not forcefully, but in a quiet, steady whisper that cuts through the chaos of your thoughts. A voice that doesn't create fear, but dissolves it. A voice that doesn't demand, but reassures. And what if that voice wasn't imagination, but something divine, something deeply real? This is the emotional and spiritual landscape of Jesus Calling by Sarah Young, a book that doesn't just present ideas, but creates an experience. It invites you into something unusual, a daily, personal conversation with God. But to truly understand the power of this book, you have to begin with the person behind it. Sarah Young was not writing from a place of certainty, she was writing from a place of need. Like many people, she experienced anxiety, restlessness, and the constant pressure of trying to manage life on her own terms. There was a tension within her, a quiet but persistent struggle between faith and fear. She believed in God, yes, but she also wrestled with worry, control, and the overwhelming noise of daily life. And that is where everything begins. Instead of searching for louder answers, she chose a quieter path. She began to sit in stillness, not just to pray, but to listen. And in that stillness, she started writing. Not her own thoughts, but what she believed were words placed on her heart by Jesus. At first, it was deeply personal, almost fragile. These writings were not meant to be published or shared, they were a private lifeline. A way to feel grounded in something stable, something eternal, in a world that constantly shifts. But then something unexpected happened. The words she wrote didn't just comfort her, they carried a kind of clarity, a depth that felt universal. They addressed fears that almost everyone experiences: fear of the future, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. They spoke about control, about uncertainty, about the human tendency to worry about things that haven't even happened yet. And slowly, quietly, these personal reflections transformed into a message for the world. The structure of Jesus Calling is simple on the surface: 365 daily entries. But the simplicity is deceptive. Each entry is written as if Jesus himself is speaking directly to you. Not in a distant, formal tone, but in an intimate, compassionate voice. It feels less like reading and more like being spoken to. And that changes everything. Because suddenly, this is not just a book, it becomes a relationship. From the very beginning, the message is clear: you are not alone. But what makes the book powerful is how it reshapes what that actually means. It does not promise a life free from problems. It does not say that faith will remove struggle. Instead, it introduces a deeper, more challenging idea: that peace is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of God within it. And this is where the narrative begins to challenge the reader. Because as humans, we are conditioned to solve problems, to think ahead, to control outcomes. We plan, we analyze, we prepare for every possible scenario. And when things feel uncertain, we try to hold on tighter. But Jesus Calling gently dismantles this mindset. It suggests that the very thing we rely on, control, is often the root of our anxiety. And instead, it offers something radically different: surrender. Not surrender as defeat, but as trust. Not letting go because you're weak, but because you understand that you were never meant to carry everything alone. This idea repeats throughout the book like a steady rhythm. Trust me. Stay close to me. Live in this moment. At first, it feels simple, almost too simple. But then it begins to go deeper. The book introduces the concept of living in the present, not as a motivational cliché, but as a spiritual discipline. It suggests that most of our anxiety comes from living in a future that doesn't yet exist, or being trapped in a past that cannot be changed. And in doing so, we miss the only place where peace is actually available: the present moment. But living in the present is not easy, because the mind resists it. The mind wants answers. It wants certainty. It wants control over outcomes. It constantly asks, what will happen next? What if things go wrong? How do I fix everything? And Jesus Calling responds, not with detailed solutions, but with a shift in perspective. You don't need to know the future. You only need to trust me in this moment. This is where the emotional tension of the book reaches a new level. Because now it is no longer just comforting, it is confronting. It asks the reader to examine their deepest habits of thinking, their constant need to predict, to worry, to control. And it gently suggests that these habits, while natural, are also limiting. Instead of bringing peace, they create restlessness. Instead of bringing clarity, they create confusion. And so, the book begins to guide the reader toward a different way of living, one that is slower, quieter, and far more intentional. It emphasizes stillness. Not just physical stillness, but mental stillness. The ability to pause, to step back from the noise, to stop the constant stream of thoughts and simply be present. And in that stillness, something powerful happens. Clarity begins to emerge. Peace begins to settle in. And most importantly, connection begins to deepen. Because according to Jesus' calling, God is not distant. He is not waiting for perfect conditions or perfect behavior. He is present, always. But the problem is not his absence. It is our distraction. We are too busy thinking, planning, worrying, rushing. And so, we miss the quiet presence that is always there. As the book progresses, this idea becomes central. The goal is not to fix your life. The goal is to stay connected. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because now, success is not measured by outcomes, but by awareness. Are you aware of God's presence in this moment? Are you choosing trust over fear? Are you letting go of control, even when it feels uncomfortable? These are the real questions the book begins to ask. And then comes one of the most powerful emotional threads, the concept of fear. Fear is described not just as an emotion, but as a pattern, a habit of thought that pulls you away from the present. It makes you imagine worst-case scenarios. It convinces you that you need to prepare for everything, control everything, and solve everything. But in doing so, it steals your peace. And the book offers a simple but profound response. Trust me instead. Not because everything will go exactly as you want, but because you are not facing it alone. This idea becomes especially powerful in moments of struggle. When life feels uncertain, when plans fall apart, when outcomes don't match expectations. In those moments, the natural reaction is to panic, to overthink, to try and regain control. But Jesus' calling offers a different response. Be still. Not because it is easy, but because it is the only way to experience peace in the middle of uncertainty. And as the narrative continues, a transformation begins to take place within the reader. At first, they seek answers. Then they seek comfort. But eventually, they begin to seek connection. And that is the turning point. Because once connection becomes the priority, everything else starts to shift. Problems don't disappear, but they feel lighter. Uncertainty doesn't vanish, but it feels less threatening. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes more peaceful. And this leads to the emotional peak of the book. The realization that perhaps the greatest barrier to peace is not external circumstances, but internal resistance. The constant need to control, the inability to trust, the habit of overthinking. And when these begin to soften, something remarkable happens. You begin to experience a different kind of life. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges do not control your inner state. You begin to move through the day with a sense of calm, with a quiet confidence that you are guided, with a deep awareness that you are not alone. And this awareness changes how you see everything. Difficult moments become opportunities for trust. Waiting becomes a space for connection. Uncertainty becomes a reminder to stay present. By the time you reach the later parts of the book, the tone shifts again. It becomes less about teaching and more about reminding. Because the truth is simple, but easy to forget. Stay connected. Trust consistently. Live in the present. That's it. No complex formulas. No overwhelming instructions. Just a steady, daily practice of awareness. And as the book gently comes to a close, it leaves you with something that doesn't feel like an ending, but like a beginning. A new way of approaching each day. Not with pressure to control everything. Not with anxiety about the future, but with a quiet confidence in the present moment. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all. You don't need a perfect life to feel at peace. You need a constant connection. Because peace is not something you achieve, it is something you receive. And it has been available all along. In the silence. In the stillness. In the quiet voice that never stops speaking. So the real question is not whether God is speaking. The real question is, are you finally ready to listen? If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on it and share it with someone who might need it today. And if you want more powerful, storytelling-style summaries that don't just inform, but transform, make sure you stay connected. Until next time, stay present, stay calm, and keep listening.